If you have already seen my review of the Alcatel Idol 4S, you already kinda know what to expect here because a lot of the qualities here are still intact. But if the Alcatel Idol 4 is able to deliver just as well as the bigger brother, the 4S, we will see in my full review, and I would just say let's start with the design and build quality, and it looks pretty much identically the same because when I actually took it out of the box I thought, wait, they sent me the wrong phone, which is really nice to see actually because it feels exactly like the bigger brother. It doesn't feel any cheaper or anything like that. It feels super solid. We still have the nice chamfered edges that could at some point maybe scratch up, but so far they look quite nice. We have glass on the back and glass on the front. And for me, this is a really nice and grippy combo. What I really like to see on this version though, that the camera isn't sticking out. Definitely nice because it lies flat on the table but it doesn't slip, because still the highest point is a little bit of a minimal lip that we have here. So all is really nicely done, and I think just the design itself looks really beautiful, and it feels also really nice. Very curvy in the hand, even though we have chamfered edges, but they are very soft ones, and that is really nice to see. We still have the kind of 360-degree speaker on both sides here, but I will get to those later. They are really nicely hidden. Here we have the microphone, the headphone jack, the power button that I still think makes no sense, and the micro USB at the bottom along with a microphone, and the boom key that I pretty much just used as a power button, but that is kind of okay. Here we have the SD card and SIM card tray really nicely hidden because I almost didn't find it. It actually opens up exactly to the boom key, and this is really nicely integrated here. Here we have the volume rocker, a little bit too high, but therefore quite nice in terms of tactile feedback, but it feels almost a little bit flush and too hard to press, but all done still really nicely here. I can't really complain about the design. It works nice. One-hand usability was still quite okay. The omni-balance design works quite good, and you could use it both ways if you want it because there is this kind of reversible mode. So in terms of design, really nicely done. There is a really bright notification LED, a white one though only, and that is the one thing that I had to say. As you can see here, the bezels are absolutely nicely done here, and I think it's already time to go to the display. 1080p IPS this time, and it is a really lovely one because the whites are exactly where they want or where they should be. There is still a color temperature control there, but I wouldn't really change that one because it is exactly already where it should be. The blacks are very deep, and there is just a minimal amount of IPS glow, so no real need to complain about that. The colors are maybe actually one of the highlights here because they are super natural and super accurate, because definitely not oversaturated, and I noticed that in comparison to the P9 Lite from Huawei, that this one is definitely a lot more natural. Colors are still saturated, so it doesn't look washed out or dull or something, but they aren't overblown or something like that, so they make a really nice appearance here. Maximum brightness was also really good. The low sorry, I got that wrong. The sunlight readability was absolutely fine, and the viewing angles are absolutely stable as well, even though this never really looks like it on the camera. So I have no complaints about the display. It's a really lovely one. Personally, if you maybe prefer something a little bit more popping, then you should go for the P9 Lite because this one is more natural, but therefore on a really high level, and the 1080p resolution is still more than just fine because it's very sharp. Maybe not quite good enough for a VR experience that we also have, which I actually don't even have here, but I would say let's just get to the sound, and that is but I would say the qualities are pretty much identical to its bigger brother. I'm not quite sure if that's identically the same because I didn't have them side by side, but I have to say it's definitely the loudest 5.2-inch phone, or at least in this size range, that I've ever heard. Super loud, and it sounds also really great. We have a nice amount of bass, the mids are super solid and really clear highs. And the best thing maybe here is, if we just check that real quick, is that we have a max audio software here in the settings that actually works for the speaker as well. So you could tune that if you want to, get the treble max bass and all that, and you can even set different presets and save them, and this really makes a difference. And it doesn't it doesn't just only work for the speaker but also for the headphone jack, which is maybe the next best thing to an HTC 10 because it is noticeably louder than the rest of the competition, especially in the smaller, especially not flagship range, and it also sounds great. Not just loud, but also great. Really, really nice. Top. They did pretty much the best possible that they could do in terms of sound experience on a not flagship phone, and it even beats pretty much every flagship phone if we are not talking about the HTC 10 here. So the next thing, the performance. And I didn't really launch any apps, so you will see the loading times here as well. Of course, this is now rendering, but you can see the launch time on its own was quite fast. Let's try a few more apps. And as you can see, the launch times are definitely absolutely fine. Nothing to complain here. Everything works out quite nice. Some apps need a little bit longer, but that's due to the apps. But as you can see, there is no slow feeling or something like that. It works out absolutely fine. And if we go into here, I want to actually show off with the one weakness here, because if you are one of the few people that actually still use the older engine browser as I do, for example, Naked Browser, you will notice that it doesn't perform 100% here because it feels a little bit stuttery here in my opinion. It's still good enough and I could use it, but it wasn't the best experience. But I'm one of the very few ones that does this, because as we'll see here in Chrome, it works absolutely fine. Battery smooth, little to no lag. Okay, here it actually looks for some reason like it would, but it performs great. And if we go into apps, for example, like Phoenix, there everything is just fine. The 617 does a great job. I personally would say that the Moto G4 actually felt a little bit better. Just a tad and a little bit of a smidgen smoother, because we have a little bit of a hard lag. It is very smooth if it is smooth, but there seems to be some small hard lag and stutter there. Not enough to break the experience, don't at all. And if you can see, the multitasking works just fine. With 2 GB of RAM, I could use like 8 apps or even more sometimes. So this was all fine. No complaints here at all. Even though it might be not the best performer, I have to say I would still wish the Snapdragon 650 to be in here, which would have made it definitely one of the very, very best mid-range phones on the market. But the 617 still knows to deliver for a normal phone of a price range of around 300, and even in the US just 200, it knows to perform definitely more than just well enough. And if you talk about the gaming performance, here I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed, because especially the Moto G4 with the same OSC just felt a little bit smoother and with higher frame rates, because this was the one thing that I was missing here. The frame rates just weren't as high. It didn't have any overheating issues, because as you can see here, 41 degrees after like half an hour was absolutely okay, but it isn't the first choice of mine if it comes to gaming performance. Now, if we talk about the battery life, a full charge takes 2 hours, which is absolutely fine. Okay, the battery isn't the best one, but it is definitely way faster than something like the P9 Lite, which is a direct competitor, and I will make a direct comparison between those two, because I think after all they are the pretty much two best phones at this price range. About the battery life itself though, I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed, because not that the battery is already a little bit smaller and I didn't expect the best outcome, but after my first run I had about 4 hours in mixed use, which would have still been fine, but after that I went more down to like 3.5 and a little bit more, so I would have wished for more here. You could on Wi-Fi only get to close to 5 hours, but in the end the battery life is not the best. I would say it's okay, it's close to being decent and solid enough, but there was room for improvement. If they would have got to put a 3000 mAh battery in here, we would have definitely gotten something better. And I would say, let's check the software here. We have quick launch from the lock screen, which is definitely a nice feature. We have the customizable quick settings. As you can see here, it looks a little bit different in terms of stock Android, but it works pretty much the same after all. And the whole UI, as you can see here, looks a lot like stock. As you can see here, everything is there. You have a few customizations like the boom key that I already showed you, that can launch different things like the boom effects, the camera key, and also trigger applications. This is what I do, because I've used an app called Standby Touch, and that one allows me to use that as the power button, but then you kind of lose already the functionality of the key itself. In the notifications, as I already showed you, we have the Max Audio software, which is a nice addition. It definitely makes a big difference in the settings for the display. If we go into here, we have an option for the screen mode, but instead of, what we are missing here on this version is the vivid and basic mode, because an IPS display just doesn't have that one, but you can still change it to warm and cold. But other than that, it's pretty much still a very stock-like experience, and there is not too much to tell here. I'm here, by the way, not using the stock launcher. This is Nova Launcher. You have an option here in the default launcher where it has some kind of parallax effect, but other than that, I don't really have to tell that much about it. And I'm definitely pleased with the software experience so far, but from what I got from previous owners of Alcatel devices, the update policy doesn't seem to be that good so far, because a lot of people are still complaining not having even gotten Marshmallow on the Idol 3. So keep this maybe as a grain of salt. The software on its own is very stock-like and it behaves like it. It feels very lightweight and is very capable with no problems at all, and some few nice but really nice small enhancements. But if the updates are lacking, then it could be an issue. I really can't judge that so far. And that's why I would like to go to the camera. If we just talk about selfies first, I have to say I was really impressed, because quite sharp, nice color exposure and everything that worked out really nice. So it's definitely one of the better selfie cameras here. If you talk about low light and artificial light performance, I have to say I am a little bit disappointed, because everything still seems a little bit dark and quite grainy. So you will definitely need a little bit more light if you want to get nice pictures. It's not the end of the world, and in this price range you don't really get much better things, but yeah, that's a little bit of a downside. If you go outside, the pictures are definitely, I would say, overall slightly above the average, and in this price range you still don't get too much better things, except maybe something like the Nexus 5X, but the pictures know to deliver. They look a little bit soft. I would wish for a little bit more sharpness, and the autofocus, even though it works quite fast, is very slow in terms of response, because so many times it needs like 1, 2 or sometimes 3 seconds until it even knows that it should autofocus. So if you tap, then it will autofocus a lot faster, and then the pictures or the overall experience in terms of picture shooting will get a lot better, because the pictures itself still look quite good and definitely in this price range are definitely adequate. If we talk about the video quality, it's pretty much the same. The focus is quite slow, sometimes just doesn't get it should to do anything, but the video looks smooth, the video looks sharp enough, even though still a little bit soft as I said, and the exposure and everything else is okay. So it brings me to the end. Like I said already, selfies actually really good. Pictures above this price range, still not quite on the level of a P9 in terms of picture quality, and for videos quite solid. Now I would like to get to the conclusion now. Is it the best $300 phone? I would hesitate here a little bit, because if the multimedia experience is very important for you, then this is definitely one of the very best choices, because the display is absolutely beautiful, also natural. We have pretty much best sounding device in terms of headphone jack and speakers, and it overall just knows here to really impress. Still has a great design. The battery life is a little bit of a weakness, but the software is solid, and the camera for this price range still absolutely more than satisfying. So there is not too much to add here. There are devices in this price range that perform a little bit better. There are devices that have a little bit of a better camera, but the overall package, and this is what I would like to say, is still very solid. It doesn't really have too much of a negative aspect, not too many weaknesses. I would say the biggest one for me personally would have been the battery life, but I also have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt, because recently I have a little bit of a trouble getting good battery life for some reason. So I guess if there are maybe some people that own this device, leave me in the comments what you actually get, because I would actually say it should be a little bit better, because just considering the battery size and the overall device, it should get solid 4 to maybe 4.5 hours, even though I got a little bit less. So just keep that in mind. And let's not forget something like the P9 Lite that is maybe not as good in terms of multimedia qualities, but has different weaknesses and strengths. And like I already told you, I will make an in-depth comparison between these two, because it is definitely a legit battle, and one or the other will definitely satisfy you without any problems. But which one is the better fit for you is the other video that will help you to decide on that. And I would like to end this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel, subscribe to it, and I would say if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye.